What's going on, everybody? A very happy Friday the 13th to you. With this being a Friday the 13th in the month of October, I figured I wanted to do something special for it. Now, if you've been following my channel since the beginning, you will know that I obviously started as primarily a horror channel. I ranked and reviewed every single one of the Friday the 13th movies. I absolutely love this terrible franchise. Wanted to do something for the holiday, so I figured today I'm going to go through and we are going to rank every single Jason look, minus the unmasking. So the unmasking won't be a factor in my ranking. I'm going to not let the actor portrayals or the movie they're in impact my ranking either. So this is just based solely on the look of Jason in the mask and in the costume. Because if we included unmasked, you all know Jason Takes Manhattan is definitely landing at the bottom of my list. But I have 12 total here, and as always, we didn't include part 5 because we don't talk about Roy Burns on this channel.
You talking to me, Sheriff?
And coming in 12th place for me, last place, is gonna be Jason X, the hockey mask. Start by saying, it hurts my soul to put anything Jason X this low on a list. Because if you know me, or you've seen my ranking of the movies, you know I have such a soft spot for this dumpster fire. But with that being said, the thing that works the least for me is the hockey mask version of Jason that we got for about 85% of the runtime. Just a ton of questionable decisions with this look. For one, I have no idea why they chose to put the straps on the inside of the mask when they've always been on the outside, or why they changed the shape of the mask that has been the same for 9 films. But there's just something that I really don't like about the hidden straps and the squared off nose piece. And also, I know they talk about the regenerative abilities in this movie, but I just really hate the idea of him turning back to human. Like, he's very fleshy, which I'm just now realizing is a really gross word to say out loud. He's grown some of his hair back in patches, like he's using hems. Not a sponsor. This just looks like they threw a mask on Kane Hodder with zero makeup or effects. Plus, his attire here is just super generic, kind of like a much worse version of Part 7. Up next at number 11 is going to be Freddy vs. Jason. Now, this was a movie that was built up for over a decade, and when it was finally officially announced, people were ecstatic to see Robert Englund versus Kane Hodder, 2 horror icons going head-to-head. And then they didn't cast Kane Hodder as Jason. Still one of the worst decisions ever made. But personal gripes aside, as far as the look goes, I've always just kind of hated how sad and dopey this Jason looks, like with his one sad eye half open and his few strands of hair blowing in the wind. That mixed with just how baggy his jacket and the rest of his outfit is, which I will say was pretty accurate to the style of the early 2000s. I lived it, so kudos to Jason for trying to get with the times. But that combination of things makes this probably the least threatening look of any movie. This looks more like if Jason's goofy younger brother put on the mask and outfit while his older brother was off on vacation in Manhattan or space. The one thing I do give it points for and why it's just ahead of Jason X is I thought the claw marks that Freddy gives him, that was a very nice little touch. But overall, when Jason Voorhees looks more doofy than he does scary,
you done fucked it up!
Up next to start the top 10 is gonna be Part 2 Sackhead, aka the Town That Dreaded Sundown look. Now this one might upset some Friday fans. I'm actually not sure what the general consensus is on this look, but for whatever reason, Sackhead Jason from Part 2 just never did it for me, which is a shame because this is one of the better Friday movies. Now, it might be that Jason is just like a big klutz in this movie, like I'm talking Ghostface levels of clumsy, which does kind of take away from his scare factor. Or it might be those damn denim overalls and that plaid undershirt making him look less like anything resembling what we'd eventually know as Jason, and more like Farmer Bill decided to just throw a potato sack on his head and become a killer. And I know there are some people that actually prefer this look, but even as a kid, Sackhead always made me laugh more than he ever scared me. Plus, this just doesn't have the feel of originality that the hockey mask or say a Michael Myers mask does, because as I mentioned, this is just kind of a ripoff of The Town That Dreaded Sundown. In at number 9 is gonna be Uber Jason, and this is the one placement on my own list where as I'm recording this, I still don't know if it's way too high or way too low. Like, I am always battling with myself if I love this or I think it's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen. The one thing I will always defend is I think if you're gonna show this version of Jason's eyes through the mask, then the red contacts was an awesome touch. But as far as the overall look, it definitely gives me like the Predator and Lord Zed from Power Rangers Had a Baby vibes. I think if this look had been in any other Friday, I would absolutely loathe it. But considering it's in a movie set 400 years in the future, a movie that is very aware of how bad and cheesy it is, I think it works well enough. There are some days I'd put this in the top 5 or 6. There are some days I'd put this dead last. So I just kind of averaged my opinions out and landed at number 9. Now please excuse me while I get into this comfy looking yellow sleeping bag. In at number 8 is gonna be the hockey mask from the 2009 remake. Now, I have always loved this remake, and I will die on that hill. But love it or hate it, the one thing most people agree on is that it's very front-loaded, meaning it was at its best in the first 15 to 20 minutes. And to go along with that, I kinda wish Jason would have kept his look from the beginning for this entire movie. Now, I don't hate the hockey mask. I just think his head is way too big for it. Like, it's almost comical at times how small it looks on him. That thing must feel like when a girl wears high heels. It has to fucking hurt. Also, I do love how they went back to a more original Jason look as far as his attire goes, but goddamn, Derek Mears' neck is so massive it takes up half the screen. I can't stop looking at it. Everything is just kinda disproportionate here, to the point that I don't understand why they didn't just make a bigger mask for him to wear. In at number 7 is gonna be Jason Goes to Hell. Now, as you know, this is a movie I've never liked. Jason is barely in it, and it feels more like The Evil Dead, essentially making Jason a Deadite. I love The Evil Dead, but these two just don't belong together. You have a Voorhees sister introduce 9 movies into the franchise, a magical dagger that is needed to kill Jason, and this weird worm creature that is the actual star of this movie. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, the look. Getting away from the plot issues, for the actual 15 minutes that we do get to see Jason, I think the design here is pretty solid. I like the chrome look of the mask here, obviously more than Uber Jason's. You have like his skin bubbling, his head swollen, and his face kind of melded and fused with the mask as a result of the toxic sludge from Manhattan. And this design just really shows how much this character has been through. The only thing that really brings it down for me is just kind of how bloated and puffy he looks. Like, Jason and Kane Hodder have always been pretty solid built dudes. Jason should never look like me after a night of drinking. That boy's retaining water. In at number 6, and starting the top half of my list here, fittingly, is Part 6, Jason Lives. And now this is, of course, the introduction to Zombie Jason. I thought it was a good decision with the Zombie Jason looks to add the black eye holes, which actually started with Roy Burns, but we don't talk about him here. But I like adding the black to the eye holes, kind of showing that there's no humanity behind the mask, just a monster. And I like how this is the beginning of him no longer having human skin, with it getting progressively grosser with each Zombie Jason movie. But there are a few cosmetic things that throw me off just a little bit. You see, if you haven't seen the movie, this version of Jason is a lot like Johnny Depp. He loves accessories. Which, I have no idea why a zombie would care about that, but hey, do you, Jason. While I still really like the look overall, I've just never been a fan of him wearing like these yellow gardener gloves that he got from Tommy at the beginning, or his little utility belt that he got from the paintballers. First of all, yellow is just way too bright of a color to ever be on Jason. And I know it sounds weird, but the shape of this man has always thrown the look off for me. Like, is it just me? Or does this Jason have way too much cake? Damn! Up next at number 5, and proving that I am not judging these based on the unmasking, is gonna be Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Even though I dislike this movie, and I hate Muppet Jason when the mask does come off, I think while he's wearing the mask, it's a pretty menacing look. Compared to a lot of the other films, the mask in this one just really pops for some reason, and the look with the button-up is just super clean. And the only thing that weighs it down, and something I truly never understood, is why is Jason constantly wet in this movie for, like, no reason? I understand 80% of the movie takes place on a boat, but the people who made this do understand that being on a boat is different than being in the water by a boat, right? And look, I get it. I'm fully aware Jason begins the movie in the water, and I know he spent a lot of time down there. But then he spends the entire movie soaked. This motherfucker retains water like a sponge, which I guess would explain my theory of why he's so puffy in Jason Goes to Hell. Coming in at number 4, and one that might piss some people off, is Jason from Part 3D. This is, of course, the introduction of the hockey mask, and one of the greatest Jason performances of all time with the late Richard Brooker behind the mask. Like, I don't know if they used pads under his jumpsuit, or Brooker was just that massive, but damn, those are some of the biggest traps I've ever seen. This Jason definitely works out. I love this look. It's truly iconic, but it's just there happen to be 3 that I like a little bit more. Of course, this was always going to get a top 5 spot, just because it's the introduction of the Jason look we all know and love, and just for how big and hulking he was. The jumpsuit was clearly an upgrade to the Farmer Bill look. The hockey mask is the cleanest it's ever going to look. And also, not much to do with the look, but I just love how casually this Jason walks around. His little walk he does on the dock, just so nonchalant, makes me laugh every time. And although I'm not ranking the looks without the mask, this Jason still gets bonus points for having one of the scariest moments in this entire franchise. Now getting into my top 3, number 3 is going to be part 4 of The Final Chapter. If you know me, you know this is by far my favorite movie in the franchise. This is Ted White and Jason in all his glory. And although this Jason loses a few points for not being as jacked as part 3, even though these movies take place within a few days of each other, do yourself a favor, don't ask about continuity when it comes to this franchise. He more than makes up for that with just his aggression and how angry he is. You gotta give him credit for some of the most iconic Jason moments, like introducing his love of making dramatic entrances breaking through doors. And appearance-wise, I mean, I don't have a ton to say, it's just a really good look. Other than being a little more on the lean and mean side, I do like how this mask isn't quite as form-fitting, and how it looks a little more grungy and worn in than the super clean look of part 3. Plus, that little souvenir that Chris gave him, that axe mark, adds a nice touch of character. And it's only the beginning of how fucked up this mask would get. In at number 2, and my runner-up for my favorite Jason look, is the 2009 Sackhead remake. And I know what you're saying, what a hypocrite, right? Earlier I said the Sackhead look wasn't scary. But this movie proves, when properly executed, it can be. Actually, it can be downright horrifying. And this is by far the superior Sackhead look. But leave something in the comments if you prefer part 2s. The first time I saw this Jason, I was actually at the theater in 2009, and I was just blown away with how badass and creepy he looked. In my opinion, while this isn't my number 1 pick, I think this is by far the most terrifying and menacing look that Jason has ever had. Like, if you had to choose a single Jason that you'd least like to run into in a dark alley, tell me this wouldn't be your pick. And also, I'm no fashionista, but I do think the sack here works much better with the rest of Jason's outfit than the hockey mask does. Mostly because it covers that hulking fucking neck. I mean, come on, look at it. And of course, by process of elimination, you know what my number 1 pick is. Listen, this is a subjective list, so you can't really say anybody's opinions are wrong, but if this isn't your top pick, you're wrong. Coming in at number 1 is Part 7, The New Blood. This is, of course, the first appearance of Kane Hodder, adding his touch to the Jason character. And while this wouldn't quite rank in the top half of my Friday movies, I do think this is the definitive Jason look. Like, I think when most people think of the character, either this or part 3 or 4 is probably what comes to mind. I just love how you can see all the damage he has taken up to this point, which also serves as a nice reminder of some of the biggest moments throughout the franchise. Between the chains wrapped around him from Tommy calling him a pussy, and the mask being broken at the bottom from the boat propeller in part 6, exposing his jaw and teeth, the axe mark from Chris in part 3, the exposed rib cage and spinal cord, this is just such an awesome look. While I don't think it's quite as scary as my number 2 pick, this deserves the top spot for just how truly iconic it is. Alright guys, but that's gonna do it for my ranking of all the Jason masked looks. As always, let me know what you thought of the video down in the comments below. Let me know how you would rank these 12. If you want to add a few more like Never Hike Alone, go for it. Give me your complete list down below. While I have you, me and 2 friends do a weekly pop culture podcast called Culture Shocked. I will put the links for that down in the video description. And as always, if you enjoyed this, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe so you don't miss any future content. With me being primarily a horror channel, October is always a big month, so you don't want to miss it. I hope everybody has a great Friday the 13th and Halloween, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.